The longship cut through the mist-veiled waters, its dragon-head prow piercing the dawnlight as it glided toward the sleeping Saxon settlement. Odin Quellson stood at the helm, his broad shoulders squared beneath a cloak of wolf fur, the gold arm rings marking his status as chieftain of the Raven clan catching the first light of day. The salt spray clung to his auburn beard, braided with silver thread that matched the scars on his weathered face. His men waited in silence, axes and swords ready, their breath forming clouds in the cold morning air. "Remember," Odin said, his voice low enough to reach only his warriors, "we take what we need and spill blood only if necessary. The gods do not honor needless slaughter." His second, Thorsten, gave a respectful nod. "As you command, Jarl." But Odin knew the fire that burned in his men's hearts, the same fire that had once raged in his own before years of raids and bloodshed had tempered it with wisdom. Their settlement needed supplies to survive the coming winter, and the Saxon lands offered bounty that their fjord-locked home could not provide. The settlement appeared through the thinning fog, and Odin raised his hand. The oars stilled, and the ship drifted silently toward the shore. In his mind, he recited a prayer to Odin All-Father, his namesake, not for victory, but for the wisdom to lead his people without bringing dishonor to his father's memory. Halfdan the Red had been slain by Saxon warriors 5 summers past, his body denied proper burial rites. As his son, Odin had sworn a blood oath to avenge this dishonor. Each raid into Saxon territory brought him closer to fulfilling that vow, to finding the Lord responsible for his father's death. Until then, his father's spirit could not find peace in the halls of Valhalla. "For honor," he whispered, drawing his sword as the keel scraped against the shoreline. The warning horn sounded too late. By the time the Saxons emerged from their homes, clutching hastily grabbed weapons, Odin's warriors had already secured the perimeter. They moved with practiced efficiency, gathering stores of grain, salted meats, and iron tools, taking only what their settlement needed, leaving enough for the Saxons to survive. Odin directed his men with sharp commands, keeping violence to a minimum. This was not about slaughter, it was about survival. Still, fighting broke out near the village center, and he strode forward to ensure his orders were obeyed. That's when he saw her. She stood in the doorway of a large dwelling, a blade in her hand, fierce defiance in her eyes. Her golden hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and though she wore a Saxon dress, she stood with a warrior's stance. "Come no closer, Northman," she called out in his tongue, surprising him. "I know how to use this." Odin paused, studying her with curiosity. Few Saxons spoke the Norse language, and fewer still were women who would stand their ground against raiders. "You speak the tongue of my people," he said, lowering his sword slightly. "How is this so?" "My mother was taken in a raid many years ago. She taught me your barbaric language before she died." A Saxon warrior charged from behind her, and Odin deflected his attack with practiced ease, knocking the man unconscious with the hilt of his sword rather than killing him. "If we were truly barbaric," Odin said, turning back to her, "none in this village would see tomorrow's sunrise." Her eyes narrowed. "Is that meant to make me grateful, Viking?" Before he could answer, Thorsten appeared at his side, breathing heavily. "The Saxons have sent riders for reinforcements, Jarl. We must return to the ships." Odin nodded, but his eyes remained on the woman. Something about her courage stirred him. It was honorable, even if she was Saxon. An enemy. The people whose lord had denied his father proper burial rites, condemning his spirit to wander. "What is your name?" he asked. "Why would I tell you that?" she challenged. A smile touched his lips. "So I might know who bested me in battle of words, if not swords." She hesitated, then lifted her chin. "Gytha Osric's daughter." Odin's brow furrowed at her use of the Norse naming custom. "Your father is Osric." Was she corrected? He died in Norway. My mother named me in their way." The sound of hoofbeats in the distance urged Thorsten to pull at Odin's arm. "Jarl, we must go." With a last look at the golden-haired woman, Odin turned and called to his men. They retreated to their ships with their supplies, and as they pushed back into the water, Odin found his gaze drawn to the shore where Gytha still stood watching, her blade catching the morning light. That night, as the longship cut through black waters under Mani's silvery gaze, Odin stood alone at the prow. The raid had been successful, they had the supplies they needed with minimal bloodshed, yet his thoughts kept returning to the Saxon woman with Norse blood. Gytha. Her very existence challenged what he had believed, that Saxons and Norse were forever enemies, separated by blood and honor. "The woman troubles your thoughts," Thorsten observed, joining him. Odin grunted. "She was unusual. Nothing more." "She was beautiful," Thorsten said with a knowing smile. "And fierce. Like our own shield maidens." "She is Saxon," Odin replied firmly. "Our enemy. Half enemy, by her own words." Odin turned to his friend with a sharp glance. "Do not forget my oath, Thorsten. Until my father's death is avenged and his spirit honored, there can be no peace between our peoples." Thorsten nodded solemnly. "I forget nothing, my Jarl. But I wonder if the Allfather does not sometimes place people in our path to test our understanding of honor." Odin had no answer for that. As they sailed homeward under the watchful eyes of the stars, he wondered if he would ever see Gytha again, and why the thought of it stirred something in him he had thought long buried beneath the weight of his blood oath. When the Raven clan's longships returned home to their settlement nestled between steep fjord walls, the entire village gathered at the shore. Children ran along the rocky beach, women called out to returning husbands, and elders nodded in approval at the bounty being unloaded. Odin's sister, Freydis, approached him as he directed the distribution of supplies. Her infant son was strapped to her chest, and her face, though tired from new motherhood, brightened at the sight of her brother's safe return. "The settlement will eat well this winter," she said, embracing him. "We were fortunate," Odin replied. The Saxon village offered little resistance. Freydis studied her brother's face. "Yet something troubles you." "Nothing that concerns our people." "If it concerns their Jarl, it concerns them," she countered. When he remained silent, she added more softly, "Since Herge's death, you've carried too many burdens alone, brother." The mention of his wife, 3 years in her grave, sent a familiar pang through Odin's chest. Herge had died in childbirth along with their son, leaving him without an heir and with a heart too scarred to consider taking another wife. Since then, he had focused solely on leading his people and fulfilling his blood oath. "The thing meets in 3 days," Freydis reminded him. "The other Jarls will expect you to speak on the matter of the Saxon Lord Ethel's expansion into our trading routes. And they will ask again why you have not chosen a new wife." Odin grimaced. "The Jarls can concern themselves with their own marriages. You know that's not how it works. A Jarl without an heir leaves his people vulnerable. If something happened to you, then you and your son would lead," he interrupted. Freydis shook her head. "The other clans would never accept a woman and infant as leaders. They would absorb our people, divide our lands. You know this." Odin did know it, but since Herge, he had found no woman who stirred his heart. Until today, and she had been a Saxon, the very people he had sworn to bring to justice. "I will do what honor demands," he said finally. "For our people." That evening, as the settlement celebrated the successful raid with mead and tales around roaring fires, Odin found himself unable to join in the festivities. He walked along the fjord shore, watching the northern lights dance across the sky. The gods were active tonight, their presence visible in the shifting colors above. "Are you testing me, All-Father, he whispered to the sky. Or showing me a path I've been too blind to see. Only the distant sound of waves against the shore answered him. But as he turned back toward the settlement, a raven landed on a nearby rock, its black eyes reflecting the celestial lights above. It cawed once, then took flight, disappearing into the darkness. An omen, perhaps, though of what, Odin could not say. 2 moons later, when summer was giving way to autumn's first chill, the settlement's watchman spotted 3 Saxon ships approaching the fjord. The warning horn sounded, and warriors rushed to defend their homes, but Odin, watching from the hillside above, raised his hand. "They fly a white cloth," he called. "They come to trade or parley, not to fight." The settlement calmed, though hands remained near weapons as the Saxon ships drew closer. Odin made his way to the shore, flanked by Thorstein and his most trusted warriors. When the first ship reached the shallows, a man in fine Saxon clothing stepped forward. Behind him stood several guards and, to Odin's shock, Gytha. She wore a blue dress now, her golden hair braided with silver thread, and her eyes immediately found his across the distance. "I am Edric, emissary of Lord Ethild," the Saxon announced in halting Norse. "We come in peace to discuss terms of trade and boundaries." Odin's jaw tightened at the mention of Ethild, the very lord he suspected of his father's dishonorable death. But the laws of hospitality were sacred, even with enemies who came under a truce banner. "You are welcome to our shores for peaceful talk," Odin responded formally. "But know that any treachery will be met with swift judgment." Edric bowed slightly. "We understand. My lord Ethild sends gifts as tokens of good faith." At his gesture, servants brought forward chests containing fine cloth, silver, and weapons of Saxon craftsmanship. Odin accepted them with the proper formality, though inwardly he questioned Ethild's sudden desire for peace after years of encroachment on Norse lands. "You will join us for the feast tonight," Odin said. "Until then, you may rest in the guest lodge." As the Saxons were escorted to their quarters, Gytha lingered behind. When the others had moved ahead, she approached Odin directly. "Jarl Odin," she said, her voice lower than he remembered. "I am surprised you remember me. Few Saxon women speak Norse and stand against raiders with a blade," he replied. "Fewer still call themselves by our naming customs." A smile touched her lips. "I am not as Saxon as I appear, nor as Norse as my mother was. Perhaps I am something in between." "Why are you here?" Odin asked, aware of Thorstein watching them with interest. "Lord Ethild values my knowledge of your language and customs. He believes I can help forge an understanding between our peoples." "And what do you believe?" Her eyes met his directly. "I believe that blood feuds serve only the ravens who feast on the fallen." Before Odin could respond, she turned and followed her companions, leaving him to wonder at her words and the strange feeling that the gods had indeed placed her in his path for a purpose. That night, the great hall blazed with firelight as Saxons and Norse sat in uneasy proximity, sharing food but not trust. Odin, seated in the high seat that had been his father's, watched as Edric presented Ethild's proposal, a cessation of raids in exchange for trading rights and a formal boundary agreement. And as a final pledge of lasting peace, Edric concluded, "Lord Ethild offers the hand of Lady Gytha, daughter of his most trusted advisor and a woman of both Saxon and Norse blood, to join our houses in marriage." A murmur ran through the hall. Odin felt as though he'd been struck by lightning from Thor's hammer. His eyes found Gytha, seated among the Saxon party, her face composed but her eyes avoiding his. "This is unexpected," Odin said carefully. "Such arrangements require consideration." "Of course," Edric agreed. "But consider the benefits. An end to bloodshed, secure trading routes, and a union that acknowledges the bonds between our peoples." Freydis, seated beside Odin, leaned close. Brother, the Jarls have been pressing you to marry. This could satisfy them and secure peace for our people. A peace built on marriage to the very people who dishonored our father. Odin whispered harshly. Perhaps it is time to consider that your oath can be fulfilled through means other than blood, she replied. Would father not want our people to prosper in peace? Odin had no immediate answer. He raised his drinking horn. We will consider Lord Ethel's generous offer. Tonight, we feast as the laws of hospitality demand. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Odin found himself drawn to the shore once more. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like silver drops on a black cloak. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Gytha approaching, a fur wrapped around her shoulders against the chill. You did not know of this arrangement, he observed. She shook her head. I was told only after we set sail. I am as surprised as you. And do you accept it? To be given to an enemy as a peace token. Are you my enemy, Jarl Odin? She asked. You who spared lives in your raid when others would have taken them. I am sworn to avenge my father's death at Saxon hands. Gytha's expression grew serious. My father died in Norway, denied proper burial by Norse warriors. Should I hate you for that? The parallel struck Odin silent. Hatred is a heavy thing to carry, she continued. It bends the back and clouds the eyes until we can see nothing else. You speak of honor as if it were a choice, Odin said. Is it not? Each day, we choose what honor means to us. My mother taught me that true honor lies not in fulfilling oaths blindly, but in finding the courage to forge new paths when old ones lead only to more suffering. A breeze from the fjord stirred her hair, and in the moonlight, Odin could see both the Saxon and the Norse in her features, two worlds meeting in one person. Something shifted in his chest, a feeling both unfamiliar and ancient. I cannot dishonor my father's memory, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Perhaps honoring him means finding a way to end the cycle that took him from you, she suggested. Perhaps that is why the gods have brought us together. Before he could respond, Thorsten approached, apologizing for the interruption. Jarl, the Saxon emissary wishes to speak with you about tomorrow's formal negotiations. With a respectful nod to Gytha, Odin returned to his duties, but her words echoed in his mind like the distant call of a horn across the fjord waters. The thing gathered 3 days later, Jarls from neighboring settlements arriving by ship and horse to discuss matters of law and alliance. The presence of Saxons at a Norse assembly was unprecedented, and tensions ran high despite the truce banner that flew above the meeting ground. As the Jarls took their places in the circle, with Odin at its head as host, whispers flew about the proposed marriage alliance. Some supported it as a practical solution to constant conflict, others condemned it as a dishonor to those who had fallen fighting the Saxons. Jarl Erik of the Bear clan spoke first after the formal opening. This proposal from Lord Ethel comes too suddenly to be trusted. Why now, after years of encroaching on our lands and attacking our ships, does he seek peace? Murmurs of agreement followed his words. And you, Odin Quellson, Erik continued, have you forgotten your blood oath? Your father's spirit still walks without honor because of Saxon treachery. Odin rose, his presence commanding immediate silence. I forget nothing, Jarl Erik. My oath remains unbroken. Yet you entertain the idea of taking a Saxon wife, another Jarl called out. The enemy in your bed and at your table. Lady Gytha is of mixed blood, Odin replied evenly. Norse and Saxon both. A convenient claim that cannot be proven, Erik scoffed. I can prove it. The voice, clear and strong, came from the edge of the circle. Gytha walked forward, her head high, ignoring the startled looks from the assembled Jarls. By tradition, women did not speak at the thing unless called upon, yet she had broken protocol without hesitation. "I ask the thing's indulgence," she said in flawless Norse. "I am Gytha Osric's daughter. My father was a Saxon who died in Norway. My mother was Hilda of the Eagle clan, taken in a raid 20 winters ago." A stir went through the crowd at the mention of the Eagle clan, a once powerful Norse settlement that had been decimated in a great storm years before. An older Jarl leaned forward. "Hilda? I remember her. She was the daughter of Jarl Gunnar, who was my father's oath brother. She taught me your language, your customs, your beliefs," Gytha continued. "Before she died, she made me promise to remember both sides of my blood, to honor both the gods of the north and the Christian god of the south." "If what you say is true," Odin said, "then you are kin to Norse Jarls. Why would Ethild offer you in marriage without mentioning this?" "Because he does not know," Gytha admitted. "My mother concealed her true lineage, fearing her children would be treated as hostages rather than family." The revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the assembly. Odin studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. "There is more you should know," Gytha said, her voice lowering. "Lord Ethild was not responsible for your father's death, Jarl Odin. It was Lord Winston, his rival, who ambushed your father's party and denied him burial rites." Odin felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. "How do you know this?" "My Saxon father was there. He tried to intervene but was killed for his efforts. My mother told me the truth before she died." The assembly erupted in chaos, Jarls shouting questions and accusations. Odin raised his hand, and gradually silence returned. "If what you say is true, then my oath is directed at the wrong man," he said slowly. "And the marriage proposal?" Eric demanded. "Is it genuine, or a Saxon trick to divide us?" Gytha met Odin's gaze across the circle. "The proposal is genuine, though I was not consulted. Lord Ethild seeks an alliance to strengthen his position against Lord Winston, who threatens his borders as well as yours. So we are to be drawn into Saxon power struggles," another Jarl objected. "Or perhaps," Freydis spoke up from her position near Odin, "we have an opportunity to gain an ally against a common enemy, the man who truly dishonored our father." As the debate continued throughout the day, Odin found his certainties crumbling. The blood oath that had defined his purpose for 5 years had been built on incomplete knowledge. The Saxons he had raided and fought were not all responsible for his father's fate. And Gytha, she represented something he had never considered possible, a bridge between two worlds at war. When the thing adjourned for the day, Odin sought solitude on the cliffs overlooking the sea. The weight of his people's expectations pressed down upon him. They looked to him for leadership, for decisions that would affect generations to come. And now he found himself torn between the oath he had sworn and the new path that beckoned. "The Allfather tests you," came Torsten's voice as he approached. "He places before you 2 paths of honor." "How can there be 2 paths?" Odin asked. "Either I keep my oath or break it." "Perhaps the oath itself must be re-examined in light of new truth," Torsten suggested. "You swore to avenge your father's dishonorable death. If Winston is the true culprit, does your oath not lead you to him rather than conflict with all Saxons?" Odin considered his friend's words. "And what of the marriage? To take a wife for political alliance rather than love, is that honorable?" Torsten smiled knowingly. "I have seen how you look at her, my friend. And how she looks at you when she thinks no one notices. Perhaps the gods have aligned both duty and heart on the same path." That night, Odin found no rest. He walked through the sleeping settlement until his steps led him to the small shrine dedicated to the gods. He knelt before the carved figures of Odin Allfather and Thor, seeking wisdom. "Show me the honorable path," he whispered. For my father, for my people, and for myself." A soft sound made him turn. Gytha stood in the entrance to the shrine, moonlight silvering her hair. "I did not mean to interrupt your prayers," she said quietly. "The gods speak in many voices," Odin replied. "Perhaps yours is one of them tonight." She approached and knelt beside him. "I have prayed to both the Christian God and your gods, asking for guidance. I was not raised to be a peace weaver between warring peoples. Nor was I raised to question a blood oath," Odin admitted. "Yet here we stand, with old certainties falling away like leaves in autumn." "What will you tell the thing tomorrow?" she asked. Odin looked at her then, truly looked at her, and saw not Saxon or Norse but simply Gytha, brave, honest, and as conflicted as he was. "I will tell them that honor is not a fixed star but a journey we navigate by many lights," he said. "And that sometimes the gods send us unexpected guides." Their hands found each other's in the darkness, a small bridge across a divide that had seemed uncrossable only days before. The second day of the thing dawned clear and cold, with frost rimming the grass of the meeting ground. The Jarls gathered once more, their breath visible in the morning air as they waited for Odin to speak. He stood, feeling the weight of his father's legacy and his people's future on his shoulders. "Yesterday, we heard truths that have shaken what we believed. Today, we must decide how to move forward with honor." He paced the center of the circle, making eye contact with each Jarl in turn. "For 5 years, I have carried a blood oath to avenge my father's death. I believed all Saxons shared the guilt for his dishonor. Now I know that the true culprit is Lord Winston. Does this change your oath?" Eric challenged. "It focuses it," Odin replied firmly. "My quarrel is with Winston, not with all Saxons. And Ethel's proposal offers an opportunity to bring the true offender to justice." The oldest Jarl, Gunnar of the Wolf clan, stroked his white beard thoughtfully. "An alliance with Ethel against Winston would serve both our interests. But a marriage is a sacred bond, not merely a political tool. What of your heart in this matter, Odin Quellson?" Odin paused, aware of Gytha's presence at the edge of the assembly. "When I met Lady Gytha during a raid, I saw in her a courage and honor that matched any warrior's. Learning of her Norse blood does not change what I saw then, a woman of strength and wisdom who challenged me to see beyond old hatreds." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some approving, others doubtful. "And what of Ez?" another Jarl asked bluntly. "Will your children be raised Norse or Saxon? Will they honor our gods or the White Christ?" Before Odin could answer, Gytha stepped forward again. This time, she waited for Odin's nod before speaking. "I stand before you as living proof that Norse and Saxon blood can flow in one heart," she said. "I honor my mother's gods and respect my father's faith. Any children born of such a union would be taught to understand both worlds and to judge people by their actions, not their origins." Her words sparked intense debate among the Jarls. Some argued that such a union would weaken Norse traditions, others saw the practical advantages of an alliance. As the discussion grew heated, Odin raised his hand for silence. "There is one matter that must be settled before any decision can be made," he said. "My blood oath remains unfulfilled. Lord Winston must answer for his crimes against my father and our people. You would postpone the marriage until Winston is brought to justice?" Freydis asked. "No," Odin replied. "I propose a joint venture. Lord Ethel seeks to remove Winston's threat to his lands. We seek justice for my father's death. Together, our forces would be formidable." The Jarls considered this proposal, many nodding in agreement at its practical wisdom. "And the marriage?" Gunnar asked. Odin turned to face Gytha directly. "That is not for the thing alone to decide. A union without willing hearts brings no honor to either family. Walking to where she stood, he spoke so all could hear. "Gytha Osriksdottir, you were offered in this alliance without your consent. Now I ask for what no emissary can give, your choice. Will you join your path with mine, not just for peace between our peoples but for what may grow between us as man and woman?" The assembly fell silent, all eyes on Gytha as she looked up at Odin. In that moment, the political consideration seemed to fall away, leaving only two people standing at a crossroads. "I will," she said clearly. "Not as Saxon to Norse, but as Gytha to Odin. Let our union be the first step toward healing wounds that have bled for generations." A cheer went up from many present, though some still frowned in disapproval. Odin turned back to the thing. "This is my decision as Jarl of the Raven clan. We will form an alliance with Lord Ethild against our common enemy. I will take Gytha as my wife, honoring both her Saxon and Norse heritage. And together we will bring Lord Winston to justice for my father's death." Eric stood, his expression grave. "And if the Jarls do not all agree with this path?" "Then they may speak now and be heard," Odin replied. "The thing exists so that all voices may contribute to our course." What followed was hours of intense debate, with Jarls arguing passionately for and against the proposal. Throughout it all, Odin and Gytha stood side by side, united in their vision of a future that broke with the cycle of vengeance and counter-vengeance. As the sun began to set, the thing reached its conclusion. While not unanimous, a clear majority of Jarls supported Odin's decision. The alliance would be formed, the marriage would proceed, and a joint force would be assembled to bring Winston to answer for his crimes. That evening, as torches were lit around the settlement for a celebration feast, Odin found Gytha standing at the fjord's edge, watching the last light fade from the sky. "Are you certain of this path?" he asked, joining her. "Once taken, it cannot be easily abandoned." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the first stars appearing above. "My mother used to say that the bravest journeys are those where the destination is not fully known. All we can do is choose companions we trust for the voyage." "And do you trust me, Gytha? A man you have known for so short a time?" "I trust what I have seen in you," she answered. "A leader who values life over glory, wisdom over blind vengeance. A man willing to question his own oath when presented with truth." Odin took her hands in his. "There will be challenges. Not everyone accepts this union, on either side. Then we will face them together," she said simply. "As for Lord Winston, justice must be served, but perhaps in a way that ends the cycle rather than continues it." "What do you mean?" "Challenge him to Holmgang," she suggested, referring to the formal Norse duel. "Let him face you directly for his crimes, rather than sacrificing more warriors in battle." Odin considered this. "A personal challenge would satisfy my oath while sparing many lives. And it would show both our peoples that you seek justice, not massacre," Gytha added. Looking at her in the gathering darkness, Odin felt something he had not experienced since before Herger's death, hope for a future that held more than duty and vengeance. He reached up to touch her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "The scald sing of fate weaving the threads of our lives," he said softly. "Perhaps ours were always meant to intertwine. Or perhaps we are weaving our own pattern," she replied, "one that has not been seen before." Their lips met under the watchful eyes of the stars, a pledge more binding than any formal agreement struck at the thing. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them not as Saxon and Norse, but as two people who had found in each other the possibility of a new beginning. Word was sent to Lord Ethild of the thing's decision and of Odin's challenge to Lord Winston. As preparations began for both the wedding and the confrontation to come, tension in the settlement remained high. Not all were convinced that the alliance was wise or that Gytha could be trusted. One evening, As Gytha helped the women prepare wool for winter garments, she overheard whispers questioning her loyalties. Will she run back to her Saxon lord at the first difficulty? One woman murmured to another. How can she understand our ways when she was raised among Christians? Asked another. Gytha continued her work, keeping her face composed though the words stung. Freydis, noticing her distress, moved to sit beside her. They fear what they do not understand, Freydis said quietly. As all people do. How did you come to accept me so readily? Gytha asked. Freydis smiled. I saw how my brother looked at you, as if he had found something long lost. And I know the burden of leadership he carries. If you can ease that weight, you are welcome in our family regardless of your blood. Some believe I will betray him. Then show them otherwise, Freydis said simply. Not with words, but with actions. Our people respect strength and loyalty above all else. Taking this advice to heart, Gytha immersed herself in the life of the settlement. She learned their fishing techniques, helped with the harvest preparations, and studied their religious practices. Though some remained aloof, others began to warm to her, especially when they discovered her skill at storytelling during the evening gatherings. Odin watched her integration with pride, though his own thoughts were increasingly focused on the coming confrontation with Winston. When news arrived that Eadald had delivered the challenge and Winston had accepted, a weight settled on his shoulders. The home gang will take place at the midpoint between our territories, he told his council. Neutral ground, with witnesses from both sides to ensure honor is satisfied. It is a fair solution, Torsten agreed. But Winston is known for his skill with a sword. He has never lost a duel. Nor have I, Odin replied, though he knew every duel carried the risk of death. Later, as he practiced sword forms in the training yard, Gytha watched from the fence. When he finished, she approached with a cloth to wipe the sweat from his brow. You're worried, she observed. Only a fool feels no fear before battle, he admitted. But fear is a companion to be acknowledged, not a master to be obeyed. My mother told me of Norse warriors who would work themselves into a battle rage, Gytha said. Berserkers, who felt no pain or fear. Odin nodded. The berserker rage is powerful but dangerous. A warrior lost in it may not distinguish friend from foe. My father believed true strength came from clarity of mind, not blind fury. Is that why you raid with restraint? Why you spare those who need not die? Every life taken must answer to a purpose, Odin said. Senseless slaughter honors neither the gods nor the one who wields the blade. Gytha touched the raven pendant that hung at his neck. You are not what the Saxon stories say of Norsemen. Perhaps that is why the All-Father chose you for this path. And you are not what our stories say of Saxons, he replied with a smile. Perhaps that is why he chose you to walk it with me. As the day of the home gang approached, final preparations for the wedding also continued. By tradition, the ceremony would take place during the autumn festival honoring the harvest, when the gods' blessings were most abundant. Freydis helped Gytha prepare her bride's crown, woven with autumn flowers and silver threads. It was our mother's, she explained, showing Gytha how to secure the elaborate headdress. Odin would want you to wear it. I am honored, Gytha said, touching the delicate workmanship. But what of those who think I do not deserve such recognition? A Norse wife stands beside her husband as an equal partner, Freydis told her. She keeps the keys to the household, manages its resources, and defends it when warriors are away. Those who doubt you will learn your worth when they see how you strengthen my brother and our clan. The night before they were to depart for the home gang, Odin visited the shrine once more. As he knelt in prayer, Gytha found him there, her own concerns bringing her to seek divine guidance. Tomorrow we travel to meet Winston, Odin said as she knelt beside him. 3 days later, we will be husband and wife. Unless fate decrees otherwise, Gytha said softly. Odin turned to her. Do you believe in fate as our people do? That the Norns weave our destinies from the moment of birth? I believe the gods give us threads, she answered thoughtfully. It is up to us how we weave them together. He took her hand, his expression solemn. If I fall in the holmgang, you will not, she interrupted. But if that is your concern, perhaps there is a way to ensure our union before you face Winston. What do you mean? A handfasting, Gytha suggested. Not the full wedding ceremony, but a binding pledge before the gods. Then, whatever happens, we will have been united in their sight. The suggestion struck Odin as both practical and deeply meaningful. A handfasting was a solemn commitment, recognized by their people even without the full ceremonial feast. Who would witness it? He asked. The gods themselves, she replied. And perhaps Freydis and Thorsten, who have supported our path from the beginning. In the quiet darkness of that night, with only the shrine's small fire for light, Odin and Gytha spoke the ancient words of the handfasting before Freydis and Thorsten. They bound their hands together with a cord woven of both Saxon linen and Norse wool, symbolizing the joining of their separate worlds. I, Odin Quellson, take you, Gytha Osric's daughter, as my wife under the eyes of the gods, he vowed. I pledge to you my protection, my counsel, and my fidelity until I join my ancestors in the halls beyond. I, Gytha Osric's daughter, take you, Odin Quellson, as my husband, she responded. I pledge to you my strength, my wisdom, and my loyalty until the last thread of my life is cut. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, a sudden gust of wind swept through the shrine, causing the fire to flare brightly. Above them, the sound of ravens calling pierced the night, Odin's messengers, witnessing their union. The All-Father sees, Thorsten whispered, awe in his voice. He blesses this joining. Bound now in the sight of gods and trusted friends, Odin and Gytha faced the journey ahead with renewed purpose. Whatever the outcome of the holmgang, they would face it together, no longer divided by the blood of their ancestors but united by the choice they had made. The meeting ground lay in a valley between rolling hills, a place known to both Saxons and Norse as neutral territory for generations. On one side gathered Odin's party, warriors of the Raven clan, Jarls who had supported his decision at the Thing, and Gytha, who rode beside him as his handfast wife. On the other, Lord Ethel's forces assembled, with Lord Winston and his men positioned slightly apart, their expressions grim. As the two parties approached the center of the field, Odin studied Winston carefully. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 5th decade, his beard streaked with gray but his arms still thick with muscle. The sword at his side was finely crafted, its hilt gleaming with gold and jewels, a warrior who valued display as much as function. Etheld, a leaner man with shrewd eyes, stepped forward first. We come as agreed, to witness the resolution of a blood feud through honorable combat. Odin dismounted and handed his reins to Thorsten. I am Odin Quellson, son of Halfdan the Red, who was slain without honor by Lord Winston 5 summers past. I claim the right of holmgang to settle this debt of blood. Winston's face darkened with anger. You Norse dogs raid our shores, steal our goods, and then claim dishonor when you meet the sword? Your father died as he lived, a thief and murderer. Murmurs of outrage rose from the Norse warriors, but Odin held up his hand for silence. My father came to trade, not raid. He was ambushed under a flag of truce and denied proper burial rites. He came to spy on our defenses, Winston countered. Enough, Etheld intervened. The challenge has been issued and accepted. Let the holmgang proceed according to Norse custom, as the challenger has the right to determine. The rules of holmgang were explained to the Saxon witnesses. The duelists would fight within a marked area, each allowed a shield that could be replaced 3 times if broken. Combat would continue until one yielded, was unable to continue, or was driven from the marked boundaries. As preparations were made, Gytha approached Odin one last time before he entered the dueling ground. "Remember why you fight," she said quietly. "Not for vengeance alone, but for justice that will allow both our peoples to move forward." Odin nodded, tightening the straps of his shield. "If I fall, you will not," she interrupted, then added more softly, "but if fate decrees otherwise, know that what we have begun will continue. I will ensure your father's memory is honored and our peoples find a path to peace." He kissed her then, before both Norse and Saxon witnesses, a declaration that transcended the divisions between their peoples. Then, drawing his sword, he stepped into the marked circle where Winston waited. The home gang began with a clash of shields, both men testing the other's strength and resolve. Winston fought with the confidence of one undefeated in combat, his strikes powerful but controlled. Odin matched him with the fluid movements his father had taught him, conserving energy while looking for openings in his opponent's defense. "Your father begged for mercy before the end," Winston taunted as they circled each other. Like all Norse cowards when faced with true warriors. Odin did not respond to the provocation, keeping his mind clear as his father had taught him. Instead, he watched Winston's footwork, noting how the older man favored his right leg slightly, an old injury perhaps, or simply the wearing of years. The fight continued, sweat gleaming on both men's bodies despite the autumn chill. Winston's first shield splintered under Odin's calculated attack, forcing him to take his second. Moments later, Odin's shield also broke, the force of Winston's blow numbing his arm briefly. As they fought on, Odin began to tire, the sustained combat draining even his considerable stamina. A mistake, a slight misplacement of his foot, gave Winston an opening. The Saxon lord's blade sliced across Odin's thigh, drawing blood and a collective gasp from the Norse onlookers. Winston pressed his advantage, driving Odin back toward the boundary of the dueling ground. One more step and he would be forced out, losing the home gang and his chance for justice. In that moment, as he teetered on the edge of defeat, Odin caught sight of Gytha's face among the witnesses. The concern in her eyes was evident, but there was something else too, absolute faith in him, not just as a warrior but as a man trying to forge a new path. With renewed focus, Odin planted his injured leg firmly and counterattacked, his blade moving in the pattern his father had shown him in his youth, a sequence used not for killing but for disarming an opponent. Winston, surprised by the sudden shift in tactics, raised his shield too late. Odin's sword struck the edge of Winston's blade at precisely the right angle, sending it spinning from the Saxon lord's grip. Before Winston could recover, Odin's sword point rested at his throat. "Yield," Odin commanded, his voice carrying across the hushed field. Winston's eyes blazed with hatred, but with his weapon gone and Odin's blade steady at his neck, he had no choice. "I yield," he spat. A roar went up from the Norse warriors, while the Saxons watched in stunned silence. By the laws of home gang, Odin now had the right to take Winston's life in payment for his father's death. All eyes turned to Odin as he held his position, his sword unwavering at Winston's throat. The moment stretched, taut with expectation. "I could kill you now," Odin said, his voice carrying clearly to all witnesses. "By our laws, your life is forfeit for the dishonor you brought to my father's death." Winston's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, awaiting his fate. "But I choose a different path," Odin continued, surprising everyone. "You will publicly acknowledge your crime. You will pay Wergil to my clan for my father's death, 3 times the normal amount for a jarl, as is right for a dishonorable killing. And you will personally travel to the site of his death and perform the proper rites to ensure his spirit finds peace in Valhalla." Murmurs rippled through both groups at this unexpected turn. "If you refuse these terms," Odin added, "then your life is still mine to take." Lord Ethelred stepped forward. These terms are more merciful than our laws would demand for such a crime. Do you accept them, Lord Winston? Trapped between death and public disgrace, Winston had little choice. I accept, he said through gritted teeth. Odin lowered his sword, turning to address both Saxon and Norse witnesses. Let this be the end of the blood feud between us. My father will be honored, justice will be served, and no more lives need be lost to this quarrel. As the terms were formally recorded by scribes from both sides, Gytha approached Odin, helping him bind the wound on his thigh. You chose mercy, she said quietly as she worked. I chose the harder path, Odin replied. Killing him would have been simpler. Living with the consequences of mercy requires more courage. Gytha looked up at him, her eyes bright with emotion. This is why the gods chose you. Not just to avenge your father, but to find a way to honor him that breaks the cycle of vengeance. Lord Evil approached them, his expression one of newfound respect. Jarl Odin, you have proven yourself a man of both strength and wisdom today. I believe our alliance will benefit both our peoples greatly. As do I, Odin replied, clasping the Saxon lord's arm in the warrior's greeting. And the union between myself and Lady Gytha will seal it, not just in political terms but in the joining of our bloodlines. Evil nodded, then turned to Gytha. Your mother would be proud to see you bridging the divide between our peoples. I regret that I did not know her true lineage, perhaps much suffering could have been avoided. We cannot change the past, Gytha replied, but we can weave a different future from the threads we are given. As they prepared to return to the Norse settlement for the wedding celebration, Winston was placed under guard to ensure he would fulfill his obligations. The mood among both parties had shifted, not to full trust, for that would take generations to build, but to a cautious hope that a new kind of relationship might be possible. That evening, as healers tended to Odin's wound, Thorsten brought news that made the victory even sweeter. Winston has confessed that your father was indeed ambushed under a flag of truce. He feared Halfdan's growing influence with Saxon merchants would undermine his position. So my father died for a Saxon lord's pride, Odin said grimly. And now that same pride will ensure he honors your father properly, Thorsten pointed out. Sometimes the gods' justice works in unexpected ways. 3 days later, when Odin's wound had begun to heal and the settlement was decorated for the harvest festival, the wedding ceremony took place before both Norse and Saxon guests. Though the hand-fasting had already joined them in the eyes of the gods, the public celebration formalized their union for both peoples. Gytha wore the traditional bride's crown that had belonged to Odin's mother, her golden hair flowing beneath it, and a blue dress embroidered with symbols of both cultures. Odin, dressed in his finest clothing with the raven pendant prominent on his chest, waited for her before the assembled witnesses, his heart fuller than he had thought possible after years of grief and vengeance. As they exchanged formal vows and the ceremonial sword and keys that symbolized their roles as husband and wife, a pair of ravens circled overhead, a sign that the Allfather himself witnessed their union. Even the most skeptical Jarls could not deny the omen's significance. The feast that followed lasted well into the night, with both Norse and Saxon traditions honored in the celebrations. Warriors who had faced each other in battle now shared mead and stories, finding common ground in their respect for courage and skill. When the time came for the bride and groom to be escorted to their dwelling, as tradition demanded, Odin and Gytha walked hand in hand through a corridor of torches held by members of both their peoples. The light illuminated a path forward, just as their union had illuminated a new possibility for peace. Later, as they lay together in the privacy of their chamber, the sounds of celebration still audible from the great hall, Gytha traced the scar on Odin's chest from an old battle wound. "Do you believe we have changed what the Norns wove for us?" she asked. "Or was this always our destiny?" Odin considered the question as he held her close. "Perhaps both are true. The Norns may weave our fate, but we choose how to face it. My father used to say that true honor lies not in avoiding one's fate but in meeting it with courage and wisdom. And have you honored him today? By choosing mercy over vengeance. I believe so, Odin said. He valued justice above revenge, though few understood this. In sparing Winston's life but requiring him to make amends, I honored my father's way more truly than by taking Saxon blood. Gytha laid her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Our children will know both worlds, both traditions. They will understand that honor can take many forms. And they will know that sometimes the bravest journey is the one that breaks with the past to forge a new path, Odin added, his fingers gently combing through her golden hair. Outside their dwelling, the autumn wind carried the sound of laughter and song across the settlement. Norse and Saxon voices mingled in the night air, not in battle cries but in celebration. It was just one night, one moment of harmony in the long and often bloody history between their peoples, but it was a beginning. In the years that followed, Odin and Gytha's union would face many challenges. Not all would accept their vision of cooperation rather than conflict. Old hatreds and suspicions would flare at times, testing their resolve. But with each challenge met, with each dispute resolved through wisdom rather than warfare, the path they had chosen grew more defined. Their first child, a son born the following summer, was given a name that honored both his Norse and Saxon heritage. Their daughter, who arrived 2 years later, grew up learning the stories and songs of both cultures. Under their leadership, the Raven clan prospered, establishing trade relationships where once there had been only raids. And when Odin's days as Jarl ended many years later, he could look back on a life that had begun in blood oath but transformed into something his father would have truly honored, a legacy not of vengeance fulfilled, but of peace forged through the courage to choose a different path. In the great hall where schools shared tales of the clan's history, the story of Odin and Gytha became one told often, how a Viking chief had captured a maiden with mixed blood, how she had captured his heart in return, and how together they had proven that even the deepest blood feuds could end not in more bloodshed, but in the joining of hands across a divide that had once seemed uncrossable.